Hello, I'm Dave Feinlieb, and this is Beyond the Shelf. This show is an open exploration of the people and process behind e-commerce. Through conversations with innovators in the space, we learn the stories of these leaders and their strategies for e-commerce success. You can join our mailing list and find out more about our content creation solutions at itsrapid.ai. My guest on today's show is Jared Tatel, Director of E-commerce Marketing, Merchandising, and Design at PepsiCo. Jared leads PepsiCo's e-com merchandising and design teams, enhancing the presence and search optimization of PepsiCo's product portfolio and digital content across Amazon, Walmart, other key online retailers, as well as direct-to-consumer sites. At PepsiCo, Jared built an internal agency to deliver superb ad campaigns, social, email, site creative, and photography in an incredibly fast-moving environment. Prior to PepsiCo, Jared was manager of direct-to-consumer e-commerce operations at Sony. At It's Rapid, we've been working closely with Jared and his team, as well as with the broader retailer teams at PepsiCo, to help accelerate and scale the content creation process. In our conversation, we explore how we started working together, content challenges and opportunities, and where Jared sees things headed when it comes to retail media, product content, and more. Please enjoy my conversation with Jared Tatel. Jared, so great to see you.
It's great to see you too, Dave. Thanks for inviting me to be on this podcast. Excited for our conversation today.
Well, I've been looking forward to this one, and I thought a great place to start would be as if you would take us back and tell us how you got your start in the space.
Sure. Gosh, let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start, as they say. So I had, I guess, no intentions originally to go into digital or technology or what have you. We're talking 2 decades or so ago at this point. I wanted to be a professional musician. And this is when I was a teenager, and I got the whole spiel from my father. Well, no, son of mine's going to be a musician, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to go into business. So I literally took the two words, music and business, put them together in a Google search, found the best college program for it at NYU, and ended up interning at Sony Music there my junior year or so. And this was back when iTunes was a big thing. Downloading MP3s was a big thing. Peer-to-peer downloading was an even bigger thing, acquiring music illegally and whatnot. If you can remember.
I remember those days.
Yes, long, long, long ago, but still stuck in all of our minds, even if you weren't in the industry. People were engaged somehow, whether they were downloading themselves or just enthralled in media reports or what have you, like Napster and what have you. And I was interning at Sony Music at the time, and frankly, the sky was falling. Practically half of the company's revenue disappeared overnight with the advent of peer-to-peer downloading. And it certainly wasn't unique to Sony Music. I think every major media company at the time was similarly impacted. We were frankly in survival mode and trying many different things to attempt to right the ship and get revenue and revenue growth back on track. And one of the many ways that the company thought that could be done was via e-commerce. Surprise, surprise. And a VP at Sony Music, his name was Kevin. That VP at the time was tasked with starting this whole e-com thing. And it was new to all of us at the time. He said, "Hey, Jared, I've worked on a couple projects with you. We've had a lot of fun. How would you like to join this new e-com team? And we'll see what we can make out of it."
Hard to imagine now when e-com is the big thing, but I remember those. It was brand new.
Yes, exactly right. It was brand new and merely a glimmer in the eye of certain executives at certain companies and certain verticals. So we weren't about to, go about competing with the iTunes or the LimeWires or the Napsters of the world. We needed to take a different approach. And at the time, that approach was to sell not 99-cent downloads, but rather $99 or $1,000 box sets of music and memorabilia for artists on our roster, whether that was Beyonce or Britney Spears or Elvis Presley or what have you. So ended up really starting my ecom career there. Was there for the better part of a decade and ended up managing over 800 or 900 or so direct to consumer ecom stores, so the official online stores for Michael Jackson or Bruce Springsteen, One Direction, etc. Certainly learned a lot during that time. Became somewhat of, I guess, an ecom ninja, if you will, but still didn't fully prepare me for what was next in the world of CPG, where I am now at PepsiCo and have been for almost a decade now. So still learning every day. And yeah, always more to learn. And ecom is still, after all these years, I think still in its infancy, and we're still very much on the ground floor of things, if you will.
Now, two great organizations to work at. Some insights for our listeners on learnings from working in the different orgs and on these different projects.
So I mentioned my first manager, Kevin. Kevin had a saying, and that saying was, e-commerce is hard. Now, that saying isn't, I think, particularly insightful on the surface, but when you start to think more about it and what does that mean, I think e-commerce is hard. E-commerce was hard because there's no prescribed path. It's still very much like crossing the Rubicon, right? It's you, your product or service, your brand, this big empty space, the World Wide Web, and somewhere in that empty space are well, your target market, your shoppers, your consumers, the fans of your brand, and how you cross that space, that World Wide Web. It's been tried to chart it for a few folks out there, but I think everyone has a different path as to how they get from A to B. Um, this The world of food and beverage, as an example, I think still very much in its nascency, right? And how we reach shoppers, how we connect with consumers, how we bring our brands to life is still very much in the formative years. Yes, it's hard, but the same things that make e-commerce hard are the things that make e-commerce exciting, because we as brands, as marketers, get to form that future for ourselves, for the fans of our brands, every single day. And there's no right way to do it. I suppose you could say there's a wrong way to do it, but we find the wrong ways by doing.
Experimenting and trying it out.
Exactly.
So on those challenging days, we're looking at our rankings or content or whatever it is. E-commerce is hard. I like that. A little something to put things in context, but also exciting. To your point, lots of really interesting things to work on. So speaking of that, things you're working on, you're now heading up marketing and merchandising for ecom at PepsiCo. Tell us a little about your day to day. What are you working on? Who do you work with? Things like that.
Sure. So I lead the merchandising and design teams within our ecom marketing org here at PepsiCo. Um, Predominantly focused on the U.S. We have other groups around the world who work on their own home markets. So essentially, my team's job is to bring our brands and products to life on the digital shelf. as well as produce a lot of the creative, the media that points traffic to that shelf, where hopefully we inspire shoppers, give them the information they need to make informed purchasing decisions for themselves and their families, and hopefully encourage them to transact, right, to add PepsiCo product to their shelf. My day today changes every day. It feels like every hour, sometimes every minute. Um, I think my team is in many ways unique within PepsiCo, perhaps even unique within the broader CPG industry, in that we're not just working on one category, we're not just working on one customer, we're not just working on one brand. My team has remit for the entirety of the PepsiCo portfolio, which is dozens of brands, thousands of active items. So it's literally different minute to minute. One big project that we recently worked on and are still working on, frankly, is the rebranding of Pepsi Cola, which happens about once a decade, I'd say. It's amazing to think about how many touch points the Pepsi brand has, not just in the digital world, but physical world as well. You walk into your local corner store, bodega, you see a cooler there with the Pepsi logo on it. That Pepsi logo may be from 2 or 3 logos ago. At this point, it's vintage. Um, but when you think about refreshing such an icon of a brand, as well as the iconography that goes along with it, where it exists in the marketplace,
Yeah.
now you're not just taking an old can off a shelf, replacing with a new can, but you have a brand that's embedded on so many retailer sites, on every social media platform on earth, and it all needs to be, in a sense, redone from the ground up with a new visual ID, new logo, new messaging, a new language. Frankly, it's daunting, and actually, this is the first time that such a change has happened, um, where ecom is really a thing. The last time the Pepsi logo changed was about 10 years ago now. And frankly, at that point in time, people were not shopping for groceries, let alone soda, online. So, in a sense, this is very new to take on an undertaking such as this. It's a bit of a Herculean task, but the team's really stepped up and made it happen, and has done what really hasn't been done at this scale before. So a lot of work, a lot of people involved, a lot of moving pieces, but it's a tremendous challenge, and it's really an exciting one.
Speaking of this scale, opportunity, challenge, and opportunity, this is something you really brought to my attention a couple years ago when we were talking about opportunities to work together. This idea of the iconography, but the products, the content, all these pieces on all these different channels. Tell us a little about that. How do you think about that across so many different brands and SKUs, and what are the challenges and the opportunities?
Well, the challenges are plentiful.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, there's thousands of products. So think, 1 to 4,000 product detail pages um, for a traditional customer. There's more than a dozen customers at this point across which the team works. So we're talking tens and tens of thousands of URLs that, frankly, a pretty small team is managing. There's no way to do that without technology. That technology either needs to somehow slow down the clock. We haven't cracked that code yet, or it needs to enable us to do more with the limited resources that we do have. So that being the case, we're doing a tremendous amount now with web scraping and content health reporting and creative automation. I'm sure we'll get into a bit of all these topics later on. But our jobs are not possible without these advanced technologies, at least advanced for today. So there's lots to do, and we need the help of computers to do it. I'd say the advantage is we have this technology. These things are all possible. So the fact that we're capable of leveraging these systems to our benefit, systems, platforms that didn't exist 3 4 years ago, that's unlocked a whole wave of potential growth for PepsiCo and countless other firms out there to take advantage of and really scale their business in ways that couldn't have been done in the past.
I've always been really excited about the speed with which you and the team adopt new technologies. And also, I think the other thing that really stands out for me is whenever we have an idea, your guidance to us is bring that idea to us. We want to test it out. We want to try it. We want to experiment. And I think that is something we all aspire to, and certainly a lot of clients we work with aspire to. What's the culture that supports that? How's that possible? Because you think, wow, thousands of products and all these big global brands, and it's a big org, but then bring us that idea. We want to try it. Is so great. I'd love to hear more about that.
Thanks, Dave. I always like to say we love being guinea pigs. I mean that in like the nicest and kindest of ways. Success is just a big pile of failure that you one day get to stand on top of. If you don't try, you don't know. If you don't try, you can't do. So sometimes you need to make that leap. Not everything's going to work, but if you can fail fast, fail inexpensively, it lets you iterate in a way that others may frankly be fearful to do. So in that way, you can be scrappy, you can try things that others may not dare to do, and in doing so something may stick, right? You may get lucky, you may unlock a new capability that benefits not just you but your customers, your retailers, the fans of your brand, to be able to engage with you in ways that weren't thought possible before. But at the end of the day, you're right, like it is ingrained in culture at PepsiCo. One of our core values here is act like an owner. So acting like an owner often requires taking risk, right? Measured, calculated risk that we can later gauge the success of or lack thereof, adjust and move forward. But everyone here, not just me, is encouraged to take that risk, regardless of what level you may be at. Yeah, you could be the CEO, you could be an intern. You're asked to engage in a way where you can act like an owner and where you can voice your opinion fearlessly. And we bring all the ideas to the table. Sometimes those ideas come from vendors of PepsiCo, right, outside of the company. You and I were always bouncing ideas for new projects off of one another, and we're both better for it. All of those, take place within the confines of, contractual agreements or NDAs or whatever is required as like guardrails for those conversations. But once you have that playing field in place, I think everyone can benefit through the sharing of ideas and mutual collaboration.
Well, I love it. It is such a great collaboration. On that note, I would love to spend a few minutes talking about some of the work that we're doing together with you. How the challenges came about, or the opportunity set. I think.
So this was, I think, a number of years ago at this point, like really right before COVID began to change the world. I came to you with, I guess, a problem, and in some ways, maybe I was venting. In other ways, I think there was some like constructive whiteboarding and what have you going on. But frankly, we were talking a bit about this too before, right? We live in a world where resources are constrained, but we're all tasked with driving growth, even in that world of constrained resources. So an example of which, and this is the example that I came to you first, is that we being our design team within our marketing org, was being inundated with dozens and dozens of creative briefs for quick turn projects for, in this case, it was Kroger.com and our various media campaigns there. Each of these campaigns required really ground up key visual development, um, rounds and rounds of revisions, uh, and a quick turn. So when you have all of these things that are required at once, especially with a small team, it starts to feel a bit of a wall to climb, and maybe one that you won't be able to throw a leg over.
Right, right. And you could satisfy some of those requirements, but hard to do all at the same time.
Exactly, exactly. So, came to you with the idea of, hey, we have this sort of creative language that we're working with. We've begun to put guardrails around this particular media type, but we're not moving as fast as we'd like. We know we can do more with the resources we have, and think that because there's so many of these campaigns, they require so much human attention, but are still so repetitive. Perhaps there's a way that we can automate some of the work that we're doing to produce these creative campaign assets for Kroger. And out of that need, that discussion, that whiteboarding session, I think that may have helped plant the seeds of what became It's Rapid, yeah.
It
And
definitely did. Definitely.
and and from that, I think we've all grown. We as PepsiCo have been able to, with this technology that's come about now, um, do more with the resources we have, produce creative at scale that we otherwise would be spending hours, if not days, in Photoshop um, trying to produce ourselves manually. And really, now we can fulfill the creative demands of our customers, of our consumers, and we've been able to go from running dozens of these Kroger campaigns each year to now hundreds, because of the processes, the platforms, the technology that we now have in place. So that's really been a huge enabler and transformer, frankly, of our business, and what we can do in the time we have.
Sometimes when people hear these words creative and automation together, there's maybe a question mark there, which is how do I be creative, but I'm going to also automate that. And I still want to maintain the brand authenticity, the brand integrity, and the creativity, but I need to scale. How do you think about those two pieces and how they work together?
So creative automation requires guardrails, uh, but it also needs enough headroom that a designer or a marketer can make that creative their own. And whether it's for their own purposes, for the creative or thematic needs of a particular campaign or customer, it gives us the optionality to customize while keeping those guardrails, the requirements set, whether that's of a brand or of a retailer, in place, to give us a framework in which we can produce at scale. So maybe we have specifications that define a particular aspect ratio, pixel size, font size, or placement for a specific ad unit and the elements therein. But those elements that are included therein are really up to us to define. That's which products we want to feature, what we want the headline to be, the offer itself. Maybe it's a promotional price or percent off or what have you. Things like background, which can add additional context, whether that's promotional, seasonal, or otherwise. So I think it's where, to summarize, I think it's where guardrails meet optionality, in a way that conforms to specified requirements of a brand or a customer, but also give us the creative freedom to get a particular message across, to portray a particular theme that helps further the goal of a specific campaign. I hope that's specific enough without being too nebulous, but want it to be applicable to the folks who may be listening who perhaps aren't in food and beverage, as an example, and wondering how this could apply to their own work.
The other area that we've kind of explored ads and scaling that. More recently, we've also looked at mobile ready hero images, which are lend themselves well to this scalable approach. Would you talk about the challenge there, and what we've been trying to do in terms of scaling the some of the visuals there?
For sure. So mobile ready hero images are a somewhat new concept within the world of CPG. They essentially stem from the fact that most people today are shopping on a mobile device, right? They aren't necessarily viewing an e-commerce destination on their desktop. We're shopping on the go. We're building our grocery list in our car while we're waiting for our kids to get out of school, whatever the case may be. And while people are shopping on those smaller screen sizes, those same screen sizes also often make it more difficult to discern what we're shopping for, whether that's a particular size of an item or a particular size and flavor. These things often become obfuscated while they exist in traditional retail packaging when looking at an image that's scaled down to such a degree. So, what we're trying to achieve through these quote unquote mobile optimized hero images, basically an image that's still representative of the actual item that a shopper is going to receive, but makes critical information about that item more legible on smaller screen sizes. So I can more clearly see what the brand is, what the flavor is, what the size, quantity, count is for a particular item. Uh, this would be very difficult to do, I think, in a traditional sense if we were to go SKU by SKU by SKU in a portfolio of thousands of SKUs producing these images within Photoshop. So again, here's where its rapid creative automation at scale comes into play, because now we have a framework to produce these images. We can load the tool with the images that we want to impact, and by creating the schema in which these images can be produced, we can feed in other attributes, flavor, size, quantity, etc., and have the computer do a lot of the work that we'd otherwise be painstakingly doing in Photoshop. So this has a lot of benefits. One, most clearly, the shoppers have the benefit of being able to see what they're looking at while quickly scrolling on a mobile device, and two, gives our designers so much more bandwidth to focus on the things where they can really help add value. These high touch, uh, more intricate creative campaigns, they don't need to be working on thousands of individual product images. They can be working on other things that will likely have a greater impact on the business, whether it's producing lifestyle photography or generating more robust brand equity campaigns to help build the top of the funnel, whatever the case may be. But this automation capability to create these new images at scale has been a real game changer for us on multiple retailers' sites. And it's not even us who's just pushing these into the ecosystem. Retailers are coming to us now saying, hey, we see you've started to produce some of these. They look great. Shoppers know exactly what they're getting when they have these available to them as their primary product image. How can we do more of this? How can we convince other manufacturers, other vendors of ours to do the same? Because what you're doing is working. We see it in the analytics. We see it in the sales results. We see it in conversion rates. Like, let's go faster. Let's do more. And going faster and doing more with constrained resources often requires that automation. So it's really been a great meeting of minds and capabilities here that I think is helping accelerate the industry at large.
Let me turn to a couple of questions as we kind of look ahead to the next couple of years. We talked about automation, these different forms of content. Where do you see some of these capabilities that we've been exploring together, and AI, things like that? You've got online, you've got in store. Where are things headed, and what are some areas you're focused on looking on the roadmap?
That's a great question. So AI, generative AI in particular, a hugely hot topic. I'd say something that I'm very enthused about, very interested in doing something with. My team is as well. I think how we can engage in this space is perhaps a bit prickly at times. Frankly, we create products that people um, put in their bodies, right? So we want to be really sensitive about uh, what we're saying, how we're saying it, making sure that everything is exactly reflective of packaging and any regulatory requirements which may exist. So I think food and beverage at large may have a bit more work to do to engage in some of these more modern, these newer technologies. Um, there's a bit of trepidation from everyone, right? If we use these capabilities, who owns it? Who's liable if something goes wrong? All of this. So I think first and foremost, we need the framework around how best to use these in ways that are appropriate for both businesses as well as consumers. That said, I think the potential of these technologies um, to further accelerate what we're doing through automation, because automation is really just one core component of AI, frankly, right? So if we get automation right, I think then we can uh, start to tap into how does AI enable us to accelerate these automation efforts, creative and otherwise, even more so. If I knew how this was going to change the world, I'd be a futurist. I'm not necessarily that. So I think there's fortunes to be made for those who can see through that fog. But right now, it's a shiny object. It's a curiosity. But I think you and I both, and everyone listening, can likely see it becoming more than that in the future. I'm excited to see how that unfolds. I want PepsiCo to be a part of that future, and I want us to have a voice in it. I think it's just so early right now that it's to be seen.
TBD. Yeah. One other area before we wrap up, we spent some time talking about digital and e-com. In stores is a big part of the equation as well. How are you seeing some of the technologies and approaches? And I think, how is your team more broadly thinking about omni and bringing together the various parts of the shopper experience?
Sure. Well, from a creative perspective, from a promotional perspective, we want anything that's happening in store to reflect online, right? When it comes to either brand equity programs or maybe it's a particular like sale pricing that is going on at a brick and mortar location for a retailer who also has an online presence. In the same way that we as digital marketers think about bounce rate, right? Like clicking through a marketing email onto a landing page. You want that language, you want that creative, you want that look, feel, and general experience to thread the needle from point A to point B. We need to think about the same sorts of things as it relates to omni-channel because people aren't just shopping at their desk in front of their desktop. They're not just shopping in the aisles of a store. Um, they're on their phone while they're in front of their computer. They're on their phone while they're standing in the aisle of a store. They're interacting with brands and retailers and numerous other touch points, whether it's on social media or review sites or what have you, trying to find the best deal, the right product, whatever is going to meet their needs. And that's never going to happen just in one modality, in one plane, on one device. So, yes, my team works largely in the digital space, but we're constantly in touch with our counterparts who are focused primarily on brick and mortar, making sure we're echoing those same promotions, pricing, anything that could be thematic. Uh, that ecosystem needs to remain cohesive to lower that bounce rate. We need to thread the needle and make sure that what shoppers see online reflects offline and vice versa. There's really no separation at this point in time. The world is too small, and we're all too connected to think otherwise, I think.
What a great I love that. That's a great, I think, way to wrap our conversation. And also I wanted to just shout out to the team who are incredible to work with, amazingly collaborative, and you get so much done with the limited resources and the agile nature of the team. It's amazing to see it and be part of it.
Thanks, Dave. We couldn't do it without it's rapid and the technology that's available to us. It's been a fantastic partnership, and looking forward to seeing how we continue to grow together into the future to make ecom less hard, right?
Less hard, and but continue to be exciting. Well, let me ask you a couple quick questions as we wrap up here. You kind of touched on this at the outset, but one is in your professional life, what two people have influenced you the or inspired you the most?
I'm going to give two, I guess, cop out answers. One is my father, who persuaded me to take a tack that was different than going into music as a profession. But he was in software for many years. Actually, just retired last week. So kind of a model for me, I guess, from a career arc, given that he was so involved in both tech as well as teaching later in life. I think being a people leader, whether or not you're an actual professor, requires educating others, right? Educating people who are in your organization, um, educating shoppers as it relates to your product, its use cases, its benefits, educating your customers as to why your offering best fills their consumers' needs if they're a retailer. That I think is wildly important too. Just being there for family, right? Like we talk each and every day as professionals, but we also ask how are your kids doing. All of this, you can't be successful at work if you're not successful at home. These things really rely on each other, and my father definitely taught me the importance of that. For a second, uh, I guess, business influencer, I'm going to give another cop out answer. I'd say Warren Buffett, who taught us that business can be sexy and simple at the same time. Your product shouldn't confuse people. You want to be investing in businesses that are sustainable, understandable, and I think there's a lot there in terms of simplicity. You can deliver tremendous amounts of value to shoppers in a simple solution without overcomplicating things. And that's frankly a lot of my job, is bringing simplicity to what otherwise be very complex business challenges. One answer to that, again, automation, right? The more we can do in a constrained resource environment, the simpler we can make things for our marketers, our design team, the more successful we'll be ultimately. So I think a lot to learn there as well.
I love it. Two great sources of inspiration. And one other question for you. You spend time at work, of course, and with the team, but hobbies out and interests outside of work?
Oh gosh. So this room that I'm sitting in now is in the attic of a very old home. that needs a very, very large amount of love. The home DIY stuff is something that I get a lot of enjoyment and fulfillment out of, whether it's plumbing or electrical or what have you. Similar to creative production, similar to building brands online, to be able to put components and talents together and create something that didn't exist yesterday is something I get a lot of pleasure out of, whether at home or at work. That's I guess just part of the personality.
And if people want to find you online, what's the best way for them to find you?
So LinkedIn, if you just search my name, I think I may be the only Taitel, Taitel on LinkedIn. Gotta double check that. But yeah, happy to connect. Feel free to send me an invite. We can chat.
Well, Jared, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate you including me on your podcast series, and thanks for the great conversation.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard, please visit our website at itsrapid.ai, where you can find out more about how we're helping leading brands like PepsiCo save thousands of hours a year when it comes to retail media and digital shelf content creation. And don't forget to subscribe to hear more great episodes of Beyond the Shelf. See you next time.